What's on my mind is when pain becomes investment.
When pain becomes investment.
We often ask the question, what has my country done for me? And often we turn around and say nothing. But I find that in that situation, how to flip the switch is to look at what can you do for your country, even in a situation where your country hasn't done anything for you. And I want to use the gender-based violence sector, the people who operate in that space. These are people often who have a personal experience, encounter of trauma, and have turned it around to make an investment, to give back. And I want to use that as a type or a case study of what it looks like when pain becomes investment. Join Ayisha and I to discuss this very inspiring subject matter. Yes, what's on your mind? What's on our mind? Thanks for joining Ayisha and I. And also joining us is Dorothy Njemanze. Welcome, Dorothy.
Welcome, Dorothy. Thank you for having me.
Yes, a real pleasure, a real treat. I was just saying to Ayisha that I saw you were together not that long ago. The world is indeed a global space. So I'll just briefly introduce Dorothy, and I'm going to actually try and keep my little spiel short because I really want to cede the floor to those who know more than me and have first-hand experience, because my own place is just to throw out my thoughts on the matter. So Dorothy Njemanze is a formidable voice for human rights in Nigeria, and she continues to redefine activism, media, and justice through fearless leadership and transformational impact. She's the executive director of the Dorothy Njemanze Foundation, DNF, and she's become one of the most influential advocates for gender equality and safeguarding across West Africa. And her multifaceted expertise spans over 2 decades and positions her at the intersection of policy reform, survivor-centered care, and digital advocacy and media-led activism. I think, Dorothy, you're also an actress, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct.
Okay. So we look forward to some of that. So really, on the back of this, I just want to say that my encounter with the whole gender-based violence space came into its own when we did a town hall on gender-based violence recently. And I came away with this sense that I have a lot of respect for people in that space. And, it sort of brought to mind, when I was thinking of this topic, brought to mind something Ayisha said when she was promoting her book, Love Does Not Win Elections. And it stuck with me. And it was really to say, I think I did an interview with her at that time for a documentary I was doing called Silent Majority. And she said a lot of times when people face challenges, they deal with solving it just for themselves. They don't actually look beyond themselves. So you have problem with light, you put solar, you have problem with road, you buy an SUV if you can afford it, you have problem with water, you dig a borehole. You rarely ever think, okay, beyond me, what about the people coming behind me? What can I do to make that path easier for them? Because you're just too busy surviving. But the people in the gender-based space seem to challenge me, in the way a lot of them have a story of how they have encountered trauma, and they have made up their minds that they don't want other people to have to go through what they went through without offering them some sort of a helping hand. I hope I'm not putting words in Dorothy's mouth to come and speak for herself. But that was the impression I got. And so I felt that, yes, Nigeria can be frustrating, can be dysfunctional on many levels, but a lot of us can learn a lot. Not because they've arrived or somehow they're happy with the way they are. I saw Dorothy, I saw the kind of, the way her schedule looks like, recently. And I know it's not easy for her either. But in her mind, I want to hear from her and say, what is it that has made her say to herself, I cannot leave this thing alone. I cannot walk away. I cannot look the other way. I cannot just mind my own business. And we could all learn, we could all get infected with a bit of that. Not because we all can be Dorothy, but there's something we can do beyond solving our immediate problems. And that's really the challenge for today. I just want to throw out a few figures that may be updated as we deal with this topic. And that's really to say that between September 2021 and July 2023, the agency in Lagos that deals, because that's the one everyone upholds, that deals with gender-based violence, received over 10,000 cases of sexual and gender-based violence, with domestic violence accounting for 4,360 of these cases. And between August 2024 and July 2025, it received 8,692 domestic and sexual violence cases. And it basically has over 3,000 children exposed. These are just figures from one agency in Lagos, the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency. Over 3,000 children exposed to domestic violence. And that's just giving you an idea of what is recorded, what is documented in Lagos. I'm sure the case is you can triple that by the time you go nationwide. And so with that, I just want to open the floor to Ayisha and say, do you feel sufficiently challenged by this premise that you can turn trauma, you can turn pain to an opportunity to make an investment?
Absolutely. I think it's a very human, well, I hope it's a very human way of dealing with life. I think because life has lots of, I guess there's some saying about to love is to grieve, because the truth is when you open yourself up to loving anything, anyone, then there's always the aspect of loss or damage, and how you deal with that often is part of healing from whatever trauma it is. And so, yeah, I would like to think that more and more, if there's just so many examples around the world of how, people have turned their pain into policy, into, whether it's from the policy on, I think it's wearing seatbelts, how that became somewhat of a global thing. I think it started somewhere maybe in America, it maybe picked up in another countries, and suddenly became, the mantra. Now everywhere we go, we wear a seatbelt. So it started from one mother or one parent's grief from losing a child that might not have lost their life if they were wearing their seatbelt. Same thing with drunk driving. So many things, everyday things that people have taken. So yeah, I'm glad that we're talking about this, because there's so many examples of how we can be turning our grief. And it doesn't even have to be painful, personal, or loss-defining type of grief. It's even as simple as your child's missing results. Again, as you pointed out, do you solve that for yourself, or do you say, are there other parents whose children's results are missing, have gone into a black hole? Let's come together and fight this in a systemic way and make sure it doesn't happen to other people. So there again, so many examples, but we have an expert to talk with us today about this. So I will stop here.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So just taking up from that, Dorothy, I mean, I even recently, I had all kinds of drama on the local leg flights in Nigeria. And I thought to myself, this is not enough to just, survive this. I need to find a way to complain, make a problem for these airlines, because I noticed that a number of people on flights were resigned to it. And in my mind is so that they will learn a lesson and hopefully get their act together, because if they do, then all of us will benefit. But I know that flights are not quite what we're looking at here. You gave me a tour of your facilities. And when I mentioned, how inspired I was, you sort of, there's an expression on your face that made me want to dig a little deeper. So, let us know what the reality is from your end.
Okay. So where do I start from? I think the number one place to start from is some kind of gratitude for some privileges. And one of the privileges would be, aside access to education, but ability to access technology. And so for me, it started with the knowledge of the fact that Abuja Environmental Protection Board was harassing women and girls in Abuja. And I just couldn't keep it to myself. I didn't have the resources that were needed to engage the system. It was clearly a state-sponsored violence system. And so I started using social media effectively. It was Twitter that helped a lot. Incidentally.
Help us understand, why would the state sponsor that?
Oh, okay. So the idea was morality policing. The idea was to look busy, as far as I'm concerned. That's how I interpret it. It was them looking busy, right? So it was thought that women and girls needed to conform to certain things to fit into the egalitarian vision of the then minister of FCT. And so to do it, there were all sorts of things, all sorts of violations. Women on the roads as termed prostitutes. Is what's up for you if at the time you're abducted, which they used to call arrest, and I contested it and made sure it was seen as abduction and not an arrest, because there's a defined procedure for an arrest. If at the time of the abduction, condoms are found in your bag, and money, then there's no how you're going to prove you're not a prostitute, And these things that are being found in people's bags were done without any search warrants or whatever warrants, it was just arbitrarily done, and I couldn't take it. Now, I cried out on social media at the time, and one of the people who took action that's, has led to me still being alive now happens to be Ayisha. Oh, sorry. Because Aisha read about, my story and invited me to the then Osiwa office in Abuja. And that was what changed a lot for me, By speaking to her, we eventually brought in the number of people who I was giving facts to. And I think it got more people to pay attention to the whole thing. In fact, Aisha witnessed one herself and couldn't understand what that was all about. And
it was right in front of my house in Mitama. It was very weird. Still remember. Mm-hmm.
Now, I was pulled out from my car several times by these task force people so that they would take me away as a prostitute, according to them. And so we now started contesting, what is the definition of prostitution? Who is a prostitute? Why is prostitute something that is, if prostitution is an activity that has multiple partners, male and female, why do the labels stick with the female participants or perceived female participants in said thing? And so we now started challenging, a lot. This challenging, I'm telling you, took blood, it took lives, it cost lives. But I'm happy that we dared ask questions and dared to ask questions publicly for more people to have the audacity to share their experiences. So it was like a Me Too situation. Everybody could now speak about it. Then the Abimbola Ojo and Miriam case happened. And that was something that changed a lot for me because I narrowly missed being part of that by about 10 minutes because I went to drop off some other person and that was why I missed being part of that. And I just said, you know what? Let me follow you to the place where they say you are being detained and see what would happen. And upon getting there, the way they addressed the people at the gate, they say, oh, now be the ashawo then where they carry. I say, excuse you? Sorry, I thought there was the notion of innocent until proven guilty. And then what is this kind of thing? And immediately they said it, the way they said, oh, you people should go to that place. It didn't make any sense for me. And I knew that that was something that I would have failed. I felt that my eulogy would not be complete if I didn't take action. And that was how I started documenting evidence and populated the evidence and having conversations and writing petitions, engaging the human rights apparatus. And this documentation of the conversations with the human rights apparatus was what provided reasonable evidence by the time we got to the ECOWAS Court of Justice, and that led to, of course, the landmark court judgment in the Dorothy Njemazi and 3 others versus the Federal Republic of Nigeria case, where Nigeria turned out to be the very first country to be pronounced by a court to be guilty of gender-based violence. Now, people study me in the university. Damages that the court awarded have not been paid till today or since 2017, but there are critical things that can be learned. A lot of the violations happened in 2012. We got into courts by 2014. And then by 2017, there was a court judgment. Now, the Abimbola case and co, we've been in court since, way earlier than I approached the ECOWAS court. But up till now, the matter is still sitting in court 1, in FCT court 1, and nothing seems to be happening. But one thing I've learned over time is that there was something that Osita Chidoka had said at some point, something about weaponizing pain, or weaponizing the discomfort. What is that thing that should have been that would have made your time not to be wasted? And if you don't question it, or if you habitually don't question it, the culture of docility is enabling multiple perpetrators against the citizens and other people who are resident in Nigeria. And I am happy that all the work we have done over time has helped to provide meaningful documentations that, people that are researchers, policymakers, amongst others have, found credible data to use and do different ranges of things, including disaggregated data. And so, for a lot of people who are keeping quiet, they're failing the system. One of the things that has come out of it is now the Survival Support Center, the DNF Survival Support Center exists, and its daily running is proof that the services that are rendered are needed. It is survivors that are providing these services because survivors understand the pain. And many people would rather not go to government office because they don't want to be further traumatized. So they come here and it keeps us constantly overwhelmed. And in addition to the Survival Support Center, of course, there's the shelter, the Crisis and Transitional Shelter, and then there are the community-hosted safe homes. And these things have all come up as a result of, different needs. And this is tailoring solutions to specific needs. But at the tail end of it, while people want to say, oh, you're just responding to cases and the rest, that's also the part of engaging influencers. And in engaging the policy influencers, we've needed to say this is evidence. Evidence-based data exists here. These are how your actions or inactions are affecting us. These are the gaps that need to be done. This is a gender responsive analysis of 2025 budget. And this is proof that all the money that is voted to prevention of sexual and gender-based violence has not necessarily improved the quality of the budget as we hope. And then while we're thinking about it, 2025 budget as at today we've not started doing anything about 2025 budget in Nigeria. Many ministries, departments and agencies are still in 2024 budget or earlier. And so it begs for, at what point do we start tracking implementation? What are we implementing and how does that go on? It's a whole lot of things, but there are so many opportunities.
Yeah, I just wanted to delve into, because clearly you're looking at it, you're running it like a marathon, and somehow you have a vision that keeps you almost like motivated on the go. I was with you. We're there late. I saw the fact that you're living it. It's not like something you leave and then you go home. It's ongoing. You have people in your own house who you are supporting. I think about six people. So what does the average Nigerian do when they say, look, I'm too busy surviving I can't be a Dorothy in Jamanze? What is it that they can take from this story that will motivate them to do whatever it is that they can do?
Oh, actually, there's a whole lot that can be done. So those of us on the front lines need a lot of support of the people who cannot come to the front lines. It's the same thing that happens with the protests. Whether it's the Bring Back Our Girls protest that I'm proudly, I proudly have been part of, or it was, any of the Abuja raids. So all these things now culminated into the Abuja raids movement, amongst other things. Now, everybody has a role they can play. Response to sexual and gender-based violence is very underfunded, but commitments or individual or corporate social responsibility, periodic commitments are the things that can help us to beat the odds and provide services to those who need the services. Majority of the people who are beneficiaries of the services we provide, which are free, confidential, and, round the clock, online and offline, cannot afford to pay us. But the Nigerian access to justice system is ridden with corruption in different ways. And so cost of access to justice increases by the hour. So if a 2-year-old is raped, for instance, the 2-year-old is expected to pay at the police station for the people to listen to the 2-year-old and determine what kind of case it is, then pay for file at the police station. Then after paying for file, pay for the perpetrator for the police to go and invite the perpetrators to the police station. Then pay for visits to the crime scene, then also pay for medicals. And the medicals will be medicals of the victim and the medicals of the perpetrator or perpetrators, because baseline medical assessment needs to be done. And this 2-year-old, this same 2-year-old will pay for medical reports. This same 2-year-old is going to pay for other investigation logistics, amongst other things. And don't forget, before now, the cost of movement to crime scene was less than 50,000 naira. But with the cost of fuel now and the number of officers, depending on the number of officers deployed, 50,000 naira is the average cost. How much is minimum wage? Minimum wage in so many places is 70,000 naira. So if you need 50,000 naira for just one aspect of the whole thing, this is how a lot of people who need or are desirous of access to justice are worn out. Give up.
Yeah. Let me bring in Ayisha because I think we're coming to the halfway mark. There are two thoughts, Ayisha, that I wanted us to, I want to direct at you.
Sure.
One is the typical one that people say, if we Nigerians are so busy subsidizing the inefficiencies, because in other climes, these things that Dorothy is doing, they're either provided for by government or there's a heavy subsidy on them, a support system that enables people like Dorothy to run further. But instead, if you see what she's, carrying, you recognize that she's practically going it alone without government support. If anything, there's government obstructions. That's one question. What of the other aspect, which is Nigeria? People tend to say that, businessmen come out of problem solving. So people thrive. Nigeria is one of those places where we should be the solutions provider for the world, because we face so many challenges. You would think that if a lot of us had the same aptitude as Dorothy and Jaman, we should be providing solutions globally. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll start with this latter one for sure. There's these days when we're talking about the poly crisis and what looks like, obviously a change in the way the world is going with global warming. There's often this quip that, Africans are already the experts in living with deprivation and all whatnot, and so they should come. There's a double-edged sword to that, we're just too resilient. But the truth is, yes, we have managed, a lot of us are living in communities and societies and countries where we've had to manage very little. So yeah, for sure, we can share lessons. But then the flip side of that is the first point that you made about the fact that not everybody can cope. I listened to this story, I listened to Dorothy, and I was just thinking, mean, there's one Dorothy in maybe every million, to be honest. I mean, we definitely need more Dorothys. But the truth is, we also need the state to do what it's supposed to do. Yeah, to do what it's supposed to do. And that's what frustrates the hell out of so many people, that they give up. Because how many people can do what Dorothy does? Bring people into her home and care fully and be committed. Some people would just rather give the money from afar and, carry on with their lives. But even that, as she pointed out, the inequality and the unemployment rates in Nigeria, and of course the inflation, makes everybody poorer, meaning that organizations such as Dorothy's need even more support, and there's no support coming. The least you would think a government can do is, if the government knows that, okay, it doesn't have the infrastructure, then what other countries do? So you find like maybe in countries in Europe, countries in North America, then they would be in partnerships with organizations such as Dorothy's and pay them. They pay them, give them the grant to be able to do this work that they can't do. So yes, give them the grant to prosecute these cases to a final conclusion and all whatnot. But unfortunately, we're where we are. I have to say, Dorothy, I was shocked to hear that our budget implementation is still in 2024. That's just crazy to think
that
about.
The case that was granted in her favor till now, they haven't paid out.
Yeah, of course.
Since 2017.
And that's the thing. You struggle to get justice. It's almost against all odds that you get justice these days, because now our judges are, procurers of judgment, not really judges anymore. Then when you even get a decent judgment, the enforcement, these same policemen are waiting for you to come and bribe them and pay them to enforce something that they're supposed to do. To be honest, Nigeria is a really hard place. I'm sorry. But the good thing is work like that people like Dorothy have done to sort of make the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act come to life. Because if not for them, that would just be almost like a dormant law that's there but needs to be enforced.
And then, okay, I said two questions. One more. When people use Lagos as a kind of poster child, because everyone says Lagos has shown what it looks like to achieve a very high level of response. I think they're up there when it comes to
they're up there,
global standards. Yeah. What is it that Lagos has managed to do that other states can they do the same?
To be honest, I mean, I just think it will be a mix of continuity, maybe. For better or worse, I mean, again, most things in Nigeria have a double issue, but I think the continuity in political parties has probably helped the domestic violence agency, because I mean now it's embedded obviously in a way that I hope it would be very difficult to disrupt, hopefully, even if there was ever another party in power. But the truth is, in many of our states, even when the laws are passed, the structures are put in place by one governor with maybe, a wife who cares about it. Let's use Ekiti as an example, under the fire means. Once they leave, the next person comes in and is like, this is the project of in fact, sometimes even in the same party. So to be honest, I would think a mix of DVSA is also the fact that maybe there's no real interest by the powers that be, because this is gender, women, violence. So the person who has run the agency has also been somebody who's been fairly stable in the role. It's not a role that I would say attracts attention in the way that people want or are fighting for it. I think that has also helped Lagos State, that they've had stability in terms of the policy of the state, and they've had stability in terms of the person who leads the organization.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, since this is meant to be a positive, it's positive rather than a negative.
It is a positive. Those are two positive things. I mean,
yes.
But as I said, it's also in a way lucky for the people of Lagos. It could also be that they've done so well. The agency has done so well that there will now be an element of shame if, it was disrupted. Otherwise, you find that there are places where even with the same party in power, a new governor comes in and there's still disruption, because the person comes in and suddenly is unhappy with their past godfather and wants to destroy everything they started. So Lagos has been lucky.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess what I was trying to say in the sense of I wanted to end on a positive note insofar as, and I hope this lands well, Dorothy is an example. Dorothy, yes, she's a unique personality, but she's also an example of the fact that we have something each of us can do. And this whole idea of being your brother's keeper, we can do something. Even if we're not doing a Dorothy, we're doing an Ekene or we're doing an Ayisha. You were in the right place at the right time. So we shouldn't give up on doing that which we can do, to look beyond our own problems and think of the person coming behind us. I think that's really the note I want.
No, absolutely. That's the way to build society. We have to care about each other. We have to care about each other.
I hand the baton over to you, Ayisha.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you. And Dorothy, your thoughts will be most welcome here. I think this is one of those cases where my topic or what's on my mind and Ekene's are actually quite aligned. A few days, a week ago, Mallama Ummulkhairi Usman was lynched, beaten and burnt to death. She was not proven guilty of any crime and she was killed before the law could take its course. According to Daily Trust, a newspaper, in the 6 months between June to December 2025, 60 people were murdered by mobs, 20 beaten badly. In the first 6 months of this year, 27 have already been killed by mob action. Why does this keep happening?
Why does this keep happening?
What is it about our norms, law and order, and justice system that supports this barbarity? And in Mallama Ummulkhairi's case, the police handed her over to the mob. Why? Join Ekene and I as we discuss this in this episode of What's on Your Mind. Thank you so much. I think I'm just going to start with the justice, law and order because that's where we sort of stopped as we were talking about Dorothy investing her pain into something that's good for the community and talking about taking these prosecuting cases of sexual violence against women and girls or even domestic violence against women and girls. And the reason why I'm starting with the justice system is because in this case, Ummulkhairi's case, there apparently was a time when she was in the care of the police. Why did the police let her go? This is almost similar to the same case of Deborah Samuel, or Deborah Yakubu. To be honest, I keep saying different names for her, but maybe it's Deborah Samuel Yakubu, the young lady who was barely 22 who was killed by her classmates in Shehu Shagari College a couple of years ago, where nobody's been held accountable. In that case as well, it seems one account is that she was, in the care of the policemen, but the policemen now released her and these mobs went ahead and killed her. One of the reasons, there's no excuse whatsoever. There's absolutely no excuse for this barbarity and savagery that Nigerians seem to be interested in meeting out on each other. But is this whole idea that, between the police and the courts, criminals go free? There's definitely that sense. Because again, it speaks to what Dorothy was just saying in the first half of this conversation. If for the police to do their jobs, they need to be paid for everything, including going to investigate, then it means that they're open to being bribed. That's what it means. So when you hand over a criminal to them, if that person has money, then they can give them the money to be released. It makes sense. So people are getting fed up, and as insecurity rises, whether it's from theft, whether it's kidnapping and terrorism, people are taking the laws into their hands because they're like, you know what, we're not handing over this person to the police because the police will just let that person go. That's unfortunately the truth. What we need is a system where people know that if you hand over this person, this criminal to the police will investigate this fully. So honestly, these deaths of Mallama Ummulkhairi, do you know that between last week when we recorded this promo and today, 2 men were killed? Again, in the same area where this Mallama Ummulkhairi was killed. 2 men, 40-year-old Aliyu Mohammed and 45-year-old Mohammed Sani, were on a motorbike, 2 of them, going to visit their ailing uncle. When they were attacked and killed, what was their crime? They were on a new motorbike, and only kidnappers and terrorists have new motorbikes. I mean, for God's sake. They were chased, they were caught, they were beaten despite their protestations that they were not kidnappers and killed. I mean, just between last week and today. So what is going on and how can we hold the police and the justice system responsible for this? Because this is the reason, for me, the reason why people are getting away with this is one, they do it. The mobs kill someone like they did with Deborah years ago. Nobody's ever held to account. Nobody pays for the crimes. And the second one is because people have lost faith with the police and the judiciary. There's no way of knowing when people, when there's a citizen's arrest of a alleged kidnapper, alleged thief, hand them over to the police. They don't want to find that this person is walking around free the next day. They want to know that case has been investigated. It will be interesting to hear your thoughts, Ekene, and then we can go to Dorothy about this case. But what I would also like out of this conversation, in terms of it being on my mind, is what is a practical, possible solution to this really barbaric thing that we've been doing for a long time. But honestly, it's getting really upsetting and tiring to keep hearing about it.
Yes, thank you for this topic, because sometimes until you bring it front, center, and in our faces, it's like any other news. But it's not any other news because, like you say, the barbarity on its own should make everybody pause, even if it's just for 1 minute, to think about what's going on here. I know people tend to try and justify, like they'll say, people are stressed, people are under pressure. But when you look back, like you started going back, you can see that this has been happening. It's not a recent development. It has been happening. And so the only reason it keeps happening is because there are no repercussions. People aren't actually following through. you just said now, the same site where the killing we're still discussing.
Yeah.
Happened.
Yeah, just a week.
Happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the question I want to ask, because I'm reading the article I read just, not that long ago, the BBC article seemed to say that it's something more common in the northern states of Nigeria. And the cover being used is the Sharia law. But I know human beings typically will find an excuse. I know when we grew up in Lagos as children, bomo, once you hear bomo, they've put a tire on the guy. I actually saw a guy physically, they put a tire on him and were ready to set him ablaze. It was very horrific. That was growing up, so I'm not really sure that necessarily, but it's for me, if at all you say it's common in the northern states, I would say it's still a cover. The thing is, people for some reason are looking for a cover to express. Do you say it's like the kind of thing that happens when you say, "Oh, we're in war," and then you find people going around raping people and acting as if they're mindless, thoughtless people. It's like the stuff that happened recently. What was the state where they said they had this
Orozo, the festival, the Orozo festival.
Yeah,
Ozo.
And we're all like, "What in the world?" And you saw the people running. This Mallama thing. I watched the video and I was stunned. And the analysis being made was that the police themselves may have been frightened that they would be run over by the mob, that they handed this lady back to the mob.
So now they don't have guns. They only have guns when it's time to shoot people that are innocent.
Can you imagine? So they almost like a way of saving their lives. They handed the lady back.
If they are shot into the air, the people that moved, they would have moved back.
Wow.
I don't buy that.
But if it's any consolation, some of what I've read in terms of follow-up, the governor of Kaduna State, Sani, is that his name?
Yes.
He seems to be
Ubasani. Yeah.
He's talking tough on it, and there seems to be a lot of attention being given. But then, because you're telling me that just recently another one has happened, I don't know how to take whether to be. I was optimistic really until you said that we've just had, in the same area, but that there's been enough attention being given, because I think the only way to deal with this is to make sure the IGP, who is a new appointee, and everybody has said, "Oh, we're hoping that he will do things differently," has already come out and made strong statements. Sani has made his statements. He's been given a lot of visibility on social media and on TV station analysis. So that is what I think will help. Let's keep it on the front burner. Let's keep talking about it. This thing back to the Dorothy Njemanze kind of, syndrome. Let's all play the part we can play to ensure that we stand together against what is really in our own best interest, because you don't want a situation where everyone takes the law into their own hands, because tomorrow you might be the one that suddenly somebody will say you did this and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, and then suddenly mob justice takes over. So those are my thoughts, just initial thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean, let me just come in very briefly on the Sharia. Sharia doesn't allow for jungle justice at all. There's a process, there's a grand Qadi, there's courts, there's a system, there's even evidentiary requirements for different types of crimes that are required for, to process a crime. So that's a lie. And while I don't have the data to say, the data that I shared, Daily Trust didn't do a breakdown of where these mob actions have taken place. But unfortunately, the story of the Alu 4, I think that's their name, some young students, boys, I think about 4 or 5 of them that were brutally, almost the same thing, lynched to death, claiming that they had stolen a computer or phones. And it was done in full view of a whole town or village, just very barbaric. Again, that was a couple of years ago, more than 10 years ago. There were videos which I could never bring myself to watch. But I think this is where deeply traumatized people, honestly. For us to keep doing this thing, and as you say, for me, the horror is the innocence. Just catch somebody who is innocent and put them through hell and kill them, and just imagine the trauma that's left behind for their children, their families. How do they process it? I really think we need to take this thing more seriously.
Yeah, speaking of trauma, because I think when I was in Nigeria, my mom was pointing to, I hadn't watched it, apparently there was this young boy they were interviewing, young enough, maybe just early teens, and they were talking about someone whom the police had caught, possibly had stolen, but the police had taken the person away from the mob. And the boy's anger was that the police had protected the mob, and apparently was speaking with such anger that this thief wasn't left to the mob to deal with. And my mom, she was so shocked by the boy's, the venom, the way he felt, throw this person and wondered what had brought this boy to this state of mind where he was ready to say, "Give me this person, let's lynch him," kind of. Yeah. Anyway.
It's a really good question to ask if a child that young is so bloodthirsty. What kind of society are we grooming, honestly? Dorothy, what's your view? I mean, any links to the kind of violence that you deal with on a daily basis?
End of last year made it 1 year, so we're heading for a second year. But the incident I'm speaking to was where there were a series of mob attacks because it was alleged that people's penises were being stolen.
Oh, I remember that.
So one of our clients happened to be in that situation where somebody approached her on the road and they just said, "You looked at me and I didn't feel my penis again." And before you knew it, she had been stripped naked and there was a mob action. She
What kind of nonsense is that?
completely
Wow.
naked.
Wow.
Now, when we're talking about the policing system, the duplicity of the policing roles comes under scrutiny here because vigilante plays policing role, forest guard policing role, Nigerian police policing role, Nigerian police outpost because they are usually not as trained as the other colleagues, policing role. Civil defense in some cases, policing role, Nigerian army, policing role, different other community policing apparatus and religious policing apparatus exist. And so the question is, what is the basic protocol, irrespective of the kind of police it is, for handling whatever it is that is reported to them?
Mm-hmm.
We were lucky that a military person was on ground with that lady's situation because they took her to the vigilante office and the vigilante office was destroyed by the mob. But the vigilante people held their own and you know, the lady was in horrible condition. She needed MRI amongst other things afterwards. And the worst part of it was they had to bring in so the military man says, "Oh, show me the place. Let me see where the penis that was stolen left from." And when he opened his dress, they saw a penis there. You will not believe what happened. He says, "Oh, thank God, though, she has returned something to me, but this is not my own because my own is bigger."
Oh, please help us. I don't know if we should even be bothering with this kind of human beings because
Honestly,
we're talking about life.
But
here.
this is
woman
the
could have
life
been
of a
killed.
mother. This is the life of a mother, practically a breadwinner and a mother of an 8-year-old, right?
So what was done with this man?
exactly.
Oh, he was charged to court. The police refused to review the footage and get the people that were involved because they said it is mob action. It will be difficult to. I said, but there are certain people that we already know.
Exactly.
We want to see the police do this thing because the videos are there. The videos are online. These days, the videos are there. The videos are still online. Yeah. And so the police did not do what they were supposed to do. And the next thing, we had traditional leaders from the communities around Kwali Gwagwalada axis. They came, sent an entourage, a big delegation to the DNF office to come and negotiate with us to release the boy and say that the boy didn't mean it at the time he was doing whatever it was he did. But the dignity. And while she was in the hospital, one of the nurses that attended to her said 3 days prior, the person they brought in that condition died. So, in fact, this lady had started taking treatment.
Meaning it had happened before.
It has been.
Yes, now it sounds like this guy
just. It was a lot. It was happening.
Sometimes it's like envy. You just see somebody, you say, "Oh, they're doing better than you," or you've stolen something from me. This is what makes the thing so scary.
Yeah. So Kogi had a lot of cases. Edo had a lot of cases, and all of that. But for what is what, at the end of the day, the rule of law keeps failing the people. More and more people are losing trust in the access to justice system. And until that trust is regained, it's the duty of the policing system to put in the needed effort and make necessary reforms, to do the right thing. I don't think the right things cannot be done. While these people were trying to kill the woman, you will not believe that they took her into a place, into one of the vigilante offices and said, "Oh, okay, go and bring woman for him. Let him use and test this."
No, please, I don't even want to hear some of this because it's
no, but this is what their focus was on, and not saving the life of the woman who she was
and
still,
the police
she was
were
still naked.
Conversation.
She was still naked. No, this was even the vigilante people and the military personnel. Then police now came in and took her, and the police now took her away. So instead of moving her to safety, there was more interest in seeing if what he said he has recovered was functioning.
Yeah, we're not interested. But I'm just even trying to say, looking at it from, sorry to cut in, but I'm getting provoked when I hear some of these conversations. It's like taking us back beyond the dark ages. But I want to talk about solutions because we know lawyers. You and I were with a lawyer, Dorothy, not that long ago, who Perhaps because here, and I'm sure something like that exists in Nigeria, but it's just that I don't know what it is. Ayisha may inform me. The Crown Prosecution are working with the police. They're working hand in hand. It's the duty of the state because it's in the interest of the
Yes, we
state
have
to
public
maintain.
prosecutors. They don't just do their jobs. We have public prosecutors.
So let me break your heart a little more. This case in question, we hoped they would go for attempted murder or they would use the Anti-Torture Act to prosecute the case, but they charged it under penal code as inciting public violence. That was all. And then later on, they started looking for settlement. And so the soft landing that just access to justice system seems to be dedicated to providing for perpetrators is increasing the loss of trust in the access to justice system. And that's why many people want to take the laws into their hands.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Now, everybody just wants to get, and again, as insecurity increases, more and more people are being kidnapped from their homes, from the road. More people are more anxious. So more people are going to be going for this jungle justice. So it's an insane situation.
Yes. But then, is there no way we could reawaken or rekindle the partnership between the police and you said public prosecution so that they can see that if they work hand in hand, because I believe like the recent IGP wants to do something, but he needs to put systems in place that facilitate this justice, because you're pointing to the fact that if people don't have justice at the hands of the law, they'll take the law into their own hands. And we're all unsafe.
Dorothy, where everybody is exhausted, but is there room for a petition on this particular issue of lynching? I mean, it's absolutely mad. Would it do anything? Will it change anything?
We can keep trying. I think there's nothing that we cannot try with. But then again, you would have people that will say, oh, I've been a victim of kidnap before. So anybody that you find, as long as it is kidnap, because we've even had some states put a death sentence to kidnappers, right? So as long as it is kidnap related, you can do this. But the question is, who has verified that it's kidnap?
Exactly. I was going to say, it's not, people on the road cannot verify that somebody is a kidnapper.
That's why we need systems that people recognize and people trust are working in the interest of the citizens. And that is where the public, the broken down trust has now been weaponized against against whoever, an allegation is made of. I'd seen as a child somebody who they had started setting ablaze, and the person was struggling real life in Lagos, and the person was struggling, through the fire and everything. Eventually, somewhere down the line, after the person had reasonably burnt, somebody quenched the thing, and the person who quenched the fire, who poured water on the person that was burning, people now started beating that one.
Oh boy.
Okay. So, but for what it's worth, we need to remind ourselves of our shared humanity and the fact that these things can be flipped at any point in time. Maybe if we documented the stories of people who were wrongly accused and the amount of damage that was done to them and put it out there, we'll be able to appeal to the consciences of people. But for now, more people hold justification for doing it than any other thing you can find out there.
Wow, interesting. And two questions. Sorry, Ayisha, if I'm butting in a bit.
No, not at all. This is a joint conversation. Yeah.
I'm just sort of thinking, the online, can we leverage the online system? Because you said, the footage is online. Is there something we can do to make this thing more transparent and hold people more accountable? And then secondly, the situation in Lagos, because I think there is an overlap between this lynching and gender-based violence, like at least in the case of this woman, she said, you looked at me and this happened. If this happened, the same thing happened in Lagos, I would like to think that system that they've established in Lagos would protect her. So is there something we can learn from that system in Lagos that we can transfer to, say, Abuja? Just thinking.
So we've had situations where men are watching their women. Men are beating the women and they're using their legs to match the neck of the woman on the road. And people are just standing and watching. But the moment she extends her hands between his legs and starts fighting for life, they'll say, Kai, no matter what a man is doing to you, there are some things you should never do. And I'm bringing this up to say that it's an unfair system. The things that, the situations that women, or the standards that women are held to are different from the standards that men are held to, right? So there are certain kinds of things that once it's done, every man in the place just goes against the person that is being lynched and all of that. But what does Lagos have that other people do not have? Lagos has more efforts at working system than other places. Other places, Other places do not have as good enough efforts as Lagos has, and there's no follow-up system. So at some point, the FCT Police Command had said that they had charged over 40 people, with such cases to court. What came out of the charging to court? What did they charge the cases to court as? More people need to ask questions. So the Nigerian Bar Association should actually be asking questions. Yes, there's legal aid here. But legal aid here, you must prove to be indigent, and the system is it's not as readily available. The legal services are not as readily available as we need, considering the Nigerian population. But maybe if more lawyers, established lawyers, SANS and the rest, ask pertinent questions, and if in the retreats that the lawyers have, the bar conferences and the rest, these kinds of things were better scrutinized or spotlighted, maybe more practical solutions will come up, because all these things happen in communities. And in each community, in these communities, there are feeder offices, there are lawyers. So maybe if, we brought up more of these things to the consciences of people, we would find more people willing to work on that. But in the meantime, I think maybe starting out with a petition could come through, in some way. Some kind of policy paper or something, so that everybody knows the roles they should play. What is the roles of legislators? Because a lot of them are aloof as far as I'm concerned. What is the roles of ministries, departments, and agencies? What should we be looking out for? In what ways can the international community, hold Nigeria accountable for the statistics that come out? Amnesty International is big on documenting these kinds of violations. So maybe having Amnesty to project these figures more and more. But again, every time Amnesty projects these figures, Amnesty comes under attack. So do we as a people leave Amnesty to keep going attacked solo? We should always build systems to support the people on the front lines that are either releasing data or doing critical work on the front lines. If we leave body out, sometimes some people on the front lines are killed and we don't even remember what has become of them. People have asked pertinent questions and disappeared. Daddy Atta and the rest, we still remember them, but we wonder where they are, what has become of them,
Wow.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you for this very sobering, but also very few practical examples that the MBA is true. How do we get this on there? Thank you. Thank you very much. I have to say, this is one episode that I'm leaving very deflated.
Almost like you're lost for words. But actually, the MBA, when she was saying it, it struck me actually, because as she was saying it, my mind was going to the fact that you need groups like the MBA, powerful groups are already there. Band together. And if even if all they did was every year they took a certain pet project, like lynchings, and they all made it a point to even offer pro bono support, whatever. You find that by the end of that year, that system would have gone further in providing us with working solutions. So I think those of us who have legal friends in that area, let's start putting it in their ear, because it can be done. And this petition thing, Ayisha, if you go ahead and do it, let me learn from you, because I know you sort of advised me to do a petition on the hair thing in secondary schools, and I need to see how it's done so that I can also start using petition as a weapon to initiate change.
Yeah, sure. Okay, it's a deal.
Yeah, so if you do petition and you need platforms to promote it, then maybe that's where I'll come in.
Yeah, exactly. Usually we do these petitions and they're just in the newspapers, and how many people read newspapers these days? But having other platforms online, other influencers. The truth is I've left social media because I'm just tired of all the mocking it. But in the past it would serve as a good platform to be able to amplify.
It still is.
And that's if the algorithms recognize you, Abby. After a while, I realized that on Twitter, even though I had 12,000 plus followers, it was like I was talking to myself. Nobody was seeing my posts, so I surrendered.
So you feel they're not seeing your post, but I mean, just keep doing it anyway, because sometimes people just go back to the archives to say, has anybody said anything about this? And then that is where it comes from. I've learned not to give up, because the people that are online, all they're doing is hoping to wear you out.
Absolutely.
And I refuse to be worn out. It's too late.
Yes, so I think that's the attitude. Well, thank you so much. I think you reminded me of...
Thank you, Dorothy. Yes.
Yeah, the words of somebody who said, if those who are doing wicked things don't get tired, then we who are pushing back and trying to restore what is right, we cannot afford to get tired. If not for ourselves, then at least for our children. So I think my takeaway is that whatever you have to do, do, and don't just limit it to your own survival. Plant a seed for those coming after you, because, you may even be the beneficiary of that seed you've planted. So thanks so much, Ayisha, again, for, drawing our attention to these things, because they're really, as much as it shocks us, we need to face them. We need to face them because some people are living this reality day on day. And thank you, Dorothy, once again, for making the time and just lending your expertise to this subject matter. We hope you can keep us updated as to some of the progress you're making. And, some of the things Dorothy pointed out to me was the fact that even if government provided her with a building, sometimes that's all it takes. They have many buildings lying.
Yeah.
She could do so much with that building rather than spending a lot of our effort trying to raise funds to pay rent.
Yeah.
It doesn't take too much, but
honestly,
we'll have to keep.
In Brazil, they have a law where if any building is unoccupied for 2 years, people can take it over. I actually visited a few in Sao Paulo. Such a wonderful law, because I'm sure they have but all over Abuja, all over Lagos, they're empty houses belonging to all these wealthy people. Sometimes they're tied up in court. Let people stay there, beg why people are fighting. You don't need the place.
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's What's on Your Mind. Until next time, when we come with fresh topics that are on our mind to lay down here and hear your thoughts on it. Just saying thank you to our producers, Anthony and Joel, and of course, Ayisha, my co-anchor.
Thank you, Ekene. Thank you, Joel, Anthony, and thank you very much, Dorothy. It's great to have you with us. Until next week, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of What's on Your Mind. Join in every second and fourth Wednesday of the month. You can listen to What's on Your Mind here on Africa Tech Radio and on all popular audio streaming platforms. Please leave your thoughts about this episode in the comments and share this podcast with someone.